All right, continuing the test here. I am at my workplace and my in-town office. Testing. Hello. See how this works. In-town office. Testing. That sounds right. All right. Hello. Okay. There we go. So I was going to talk about a couple of things. First is capitalism can't keep the lights on. I'm here in my office in town in a 4-story old, 100-year plus old building. And I have this just in case when the power goes out. Just living in the country, I was worried, things can happen. But it's kind of weird. The power when I was a kid used to just go out for a half an hour, a couple hours. Now in California, they're just turning it off. And here, we lose a couple days. And it's like never just for an hour or two. Well, it was yesterday. I went out for a couple hours. But it's like 24 hours at a time. It's like capitalism can't keep the lights on. And, when they take profit, billions of dollars of profit in these power utilities, profit is for the people that don't work for the power company. They're supposed to be getting the profit because they're so efficient. They keep things going so efficient that, there's extra money. Well, not if you can't keep the power on. This power went out early this morning and it's supposed to be a couple hours. My wife heard a big pop, so like a transport and something needs to be replaced. And we're waiting for tomorrow, probably because they have to go wait for the part to be drop shipped. And it's like they could have those parts in the warehouse, but that'd be more expensive. But there's enough extra money for people to be profiting. No, put the money back in, hire more people if you need to in order to keep the power on. And that's not profit, that's cost. People that actually work there, that's cost. That's not a profitable business. Just 10,000 people getting paid for doing a job. That's not profitable. Profitable is when you don't have to do a job and get paid. Right? Keep the power on, then there could be some extra. But that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing, it's a lot cheaper if we don't have parts that are never going to get used in a warehouse. Some percentage of them, we won't need them, so let's just wait and buy them on need. And people just go out of power for 24 hours. I hope you're not at home on an at-home dialysis machine, if those exist or whatever. Anyway, in the winter, it seems pretty scary in the winter that there's 70 and 80-year-old people that might just be out of power for a couple days. So, capitalism can't keep the lights on. So I have this office in town, specifically to be professional. And I love this building. This building has an elevator, but it does not push buttons. It's not an automatic elevator. It's got a little driver thing. The guy that does maintenance in this building, you push the button, he'll come, and there's lawyers and all kinds of people in this building. It's a big building, big old brick building. And he'll come and drives the elevator for you. I come in usually off hours or the weekend, and I have a key to the elevator. I get to drive the elevator, so I love this building. But coming in today because I was a little. I am still distraught. It's hit me pretty hard, the Height of the Day thing, and so I didn't get any work done really. Just a couple hours yesterday. Couldn't think straight. And I was watching over here at Gary's so people are saying they can't hear me. Barclay's here. Stargazer says my teeth are yellow. Well, it could be this mocha, but I don't know. I stopped smoking. I haven't smoked for a long time, so I didn't brush my teeth this morning. But it could also be this camera. Color adjustment is making it even more yellow. Oh, my eyes, are my eyes yellow? See, that looks yellow to me too. And these are the blue tinted glasses. I wonder if there's a color adjustment thing. You know what? I mean, this is totally white wall. But anyway, my teeth definitely have coffee and shouldn't have any tobacco stains anymore. Had my teeth cleaned since I quit smoking, so. But anyway, so I was watching some of Gary's, and it's just like, I mean, I'm not expecting him to be all emotional or anything, or whatnot. I had a personal relationship with Hythla Day, and so he's a friend. I'm reacting to that. The thing is, just looking at the settings here. The thing is, though, I mean, Gary's talking about Hythla Day, like, oh, well, you get used to people like this flashlight, and then he's going on to, he's characterizing Hythla Day as somebody that says, torturing rats or whatever he used. That's totally the same as eating a bowl of Cheetos, morally neutral. That's not what he was saying. Gary's like, so Hythla Day was saying this XYZ, and it's about this determinism stuff. And Gary's like, but if that's true, then that means this other thing. And then Gary says, you say this other thing. No, he says this. You say that means this other thing. So you can say, he says this, and we all know, or I know, or I can prove, that means this other thing. That means, it's like people are saying, Bernie says the Boston bombers should be able to vote. No, Bernie says people in jail should be able to vote. And that means the Boston bomber be able to vote. Yeah, but he's not out there campaigning and saying, I want the Boston bomber to vote. No, he's saying you can't take the right to vote from people just because they break some law that might not even be illegal later, like selling marijuana. But that means, yes, it does mean that there's some heinous criminals that get to vote. And I don't actually support that. I think once you get out of jail, you should be able to vote. In jail, we can have a discussion, but not so much, or maybe based on the crime or the length of time or like a probationary thing or whatever. There's an argument to say if you don't let them vote, then people will use the judicial system to screw with, citizens' right to vote, and that the impact is minor enough or whatever. But so that's the kind of thing Gary's doing, is Hythla Day was saying, there's a moral neutrality to all decisions if we're in a this consequentialist universe with no freedom of choice. And Gary's like, well, that means it's all the same. Well, he's pointing out that the philosophy both of you have that I don't makes that the same at most. And to characterize that as somebody that has no compassion for cruelty to animals is just a lie. Okay, now my own reaction is that when I first met Hythla Day and we were talking about, it was around when I was talking about this idea I have that we should have public commissaries like they have on bases, where regular citizens should be able to buy from the government warehouse priceless. Like they have these great government pens, and they only cost just pennies a piece basically, and you're paying for them to be made. And there's in like the office supplies and the cleaning supplies. I don't know what's going on now, but traditionally I know they still have a part in it. I think it was a deaf organization or something like this handled a lot of that manufacturing, and they've just been making the same pens, for decades and decades and decades and decades. And why not let all of us do that? And so, we were arguing about things like that, and his reaction, I thought I was getting trolled, and he was really pushing my buttons, and we worked through that. And we had times where it's like, well, I can't talk to you, you're a jerk. And, but eventually, I had talked to him offline, and we sort of understood. And it wasn't that it was easier, or both of us were saying, we pissed each other off. But after some amount of time, and after his first attempted suicide, around that time, we were talking, like, about 5.5 years ago, or when I moved to Maine. We talked on Skype and whatnot, and we sort of understood each other better. And we still had a way of, when we'd argue, maybe to get under each other's skin. Like, it seemed to me he would be obtuse about things, and then he would think that that it was silly. My ideas were so silly that if some person in the street was ranting it, he'd just think I was a crazy person, so why talk? And so we went through things like this. But we also talked about, life and suicide, and I thought about, suicide and what's worth living, after my daughter died. And I've always thought of it through as a philosophical subject. But, like, literally, those times in your life where it's like, I just want to swim out to the sea further than I can swim back. I remember one time feeling like that when I was in Hawaii. And he was really clear. The things that he was living for after that attempt made life worth living. But like he had said in the goodbye video, that, he'd reached kind of enlightenment where he realized we're just rats in an unwinnable maze. And so he sort of had this attitude, which Gary has said before, that, well, eventually that's how it would go out. It'll get bad enough. And when he cut off friendship with me, and just made a video, didn't even talk to me personally, I thought that was kind of a bitch move. But I was also, like 2 years ago, I was also worried that this was that thing where sometimes people with long-term suicide plans, so I've read, they cut off their contacts. And so I was a little worried about that, and I was like, what can I do? And I'd already done this thing of where Height of the Day was a person that made me realize, of course, I could consider people, you guys that I have met, friends. And, Barklord and Daspook, and then there's people, I don't want to be presumptuous, but to be serious, I haven't interacted with her that much, especially over the whole period of time, but she's always been around, and I feel friendly inclined towards her. And Gary, stopped and tried to see Gary, and it was Height of the Day that made me realize this was stupid, and partly it was because we'd been through these mountains and tried hard enough to understand each other that then we understood each other. But still, I had to go back to, well, I have him on Skype, and I could talk to him on Skype. I don't know even what part of the UK he's in and stuff. So, I can't call up some alarm just because he's cut off friendship with me, and he says it's like because he's decided, I'm a troll, I don't really believe what I believe, or whatever it was. And then nothing happened, and he was fine. I thought, okay, it has nothing to do with that signing off, and I don't think that it did. It did have to do with changes in his life, right, that he wanted to make, and I forget exactly how it went, but he stopped making videos, and then he started making videos again, I don't know, a year later, and he was like, I don't really remember what the problem was with Piro. He pissed me off, and it doesn't really matter because I don't really need friends. And I did think there was some of this isolationism, but I took it personally rather than generally, And when we had an exchange again, and it started to go, the old way where we were frustrating each other a lot. And so we kind of cut it off. And a part of me was like, when we still had the friendship, I wasn't worried that us arguing or something I would say would trigger any kind of feelings like that, because you certainly don't want to be someone's proximate cause for suicide. Like early on in antinatalist argument days, I wondered, should I be talking with these people because it seems kind of suicidal? And I realized this isn't a suicidal philosophy. These people are not suicidal. As far as I can tell. Now, some of them might be, but like the people I was talking to, whether it's Old Fan or Gary. And yet now, as life goes on, it makes me wonder. But anyway, I certainly didn't want to, since we started talking again and had this discussion, but the friendship was gone and we had no offline communication anymore. I certainly didn't want to become too much of a frustration. And then he checked out shortly after that. I forget whether it was a comment or how I got it. Must have been a comment because he hasn't Skyped me since way back. That, no worries. He's just going to change. This kind of argument was no good. And then he started focusing on the Assange stuff. And I basically thought he was going to make it through. And the reasons he had told me of why he was living, they seemed to still apply. I mean, so as a he was going to take care of his dog or whatever. And so that's why it's hit me hard, because it was a friend. I felt unfairly rejected, but I didn't really blame him because of the emotional stuff going through, but in a way that doesn't help. But he was around and continued to be an acquaintance, and in the long run, our friendship was about being part of the public debate society. And I got over my butt hurt about getting rejected or whatever. And when I get over that stuff, it's like grudges are gone. It's like, because it's like, it's your loss. I'm sorry that your emotional situation it hurt my feelings, but I got over it. It doesn't take forever. So that's why it's him. He was a genuine friend. And Gary's reaction, while maybe to be expected, it just shows Gary actually believes these ridiculous characterizations. There's no way that it's fair to, living or dead, to accuse Hythloday of a cruelty, of a cruel attitude towards the innocent life forms. It's just like, why would you say that? You must actually believe that. And for that matter, Gary's done a lot to convince Hythloday that when you sum up life, it's a net negative. Now, Hythloday could think for himself. He's responsible for his own belief systems. But I know for a fact that he put a lot of thought into Gary's arguments, and though he also tore down certain aspects of Gary's arguments, he ended up with his own path to having this life is automatically a negative sum. So, anyway, this was a test to see if I could do this in my office. And I'll look at some comments here about my yellow teeth. It's not determined how yellow my teeth actually are. They do look good. I don't think they're that yellow. I think I got a camera color balance issue. Actually, let me see. Is there a way to... There's probably no way in this thing to do the color balance. Let's see. See, color range. What's partial? That still looks yellow to me. I'm looking at my wall. It looks a little yellow. Well, these glasses have a tint too, is a problem. So that's not it. Video format, what's that? Oh, that's not like that. Oh, I know. I think you can click on it and then add, no, filter. No, there has to be a filter because that's how. Well, I need to. I'll look at that later anyway. So I'll look at these comments. Non-violent criminal, Stargazer said, okay. We need legal system reform more than letting criminals vote. Yeah. Yeah. So Right, but I wasn't even talking about that, right? I was using an example of if somebody says, I like diamonds, and somebody else says, well, that means that you like, or like chocolate. I just read all this corporate chocolate they buy from Africa, and it turns out they're using basically slave labor in Africa to pick the cacao or whatever it's called, right? So you have, I like chocolate. That means that you're supporting child labor. And then Gary's like, you love child labor. No. He likes chocolate, and he won't give up that, and he's been informed about the child labor, so he doesn't care about it, or he doesn't believe you, or it's worth it, or whatever. You can make that relationship, but when you just jump and say, he likes child labor, he said he likes enslaving children. No, the people that have those plantations over there like doing that, because they're actually doing that, directly. So when you make these chains, it's like, okay, you can't say that somebody is fine with cruelty to animals because they have an epistemological or ontological view, an esoteric philosophical view. Stargazer said, how did he kill himself? Hanging. I think you're an asshole, probably, Stargazer. Starflame says, how's it going, Piro? It's going okay. I'm about to get to work. That's always good, right? Logical empiricalist. Gary's the least likely person ever to commit suicide. He's unlikable. He says just exactly because he loves life so much. Well, let's tell him that. David the Dower, I think his physics pursuit keeps him going a large part. Yeah, well, I mean, that helps me working and having a project. But you can always get another project, so that's the funny thing about anyone intellectual that isn't, I don't know, you can always create a project for yourself. If you're intellectual, I mean, if you have to go work with your hands and you want to swing a hammer and you got arthritis, you might be stuck. But if you're intellectual, chronic pain, which I was complaining about, there's things that can make it hard to think, right? But generally, just having a project isn't something that's going to hold you back, shouldn't. Synchronium says, just got here, so admittedly, I'm just going by the title. Are you an anti-capitalist, Piro? No, I am a capitalist. I have my own business, and I put my wealth. Capital is wealth that you apply to your business. So, for example, these computers are my computers, and I'm using them for my business. This sits here in this office, sits here so that when I lose power, I can be a professional and not lose work time and come into my office. That's capitalism. So no, I'm a capitalist. But if you want to run the power company, keep the fucking lights on. There is no profit until you do the job. Get the job done, and then if there's extra money because you're so efficient at it, then go ahead and buy your condo. But meanwhile, before that, the people making money in the business should work there, should actually accomplish something for the business. Not just have a 150-year-old loan. When they started PG&E 150 years ago, a loan of infinite duration and infinite, possible percentage points, they started the company. No, they get the profit forever. What's the profit? The extra money that comes in, but that you don't need to do the job. Well, power companies keep the fucking power on. When I was a kid back in the 20th century, the power would go out for half an hour, an hour. What the fuck? It goes out for 24 hours? Stupid. David the Dower says, your opinion on Marxism, Piro. Well, I'm not a Marxist. I think his theory of, of value from labor, I used to find that interesting, but now I just believe in a Georgian approach that's much more compatible with what everybody else also, how they define capital, which is basically, this is not just Henry George. You know, Adam Smith would say these kinds of things, but George took a certain angle with it about what it all meant together. But you got labor, you got capital, and you have land. So we know what labor is. Capital is using your wealth for your business. And so, for example, and then there's land. So, and George was saying the problem is the landlords. The government should be the one taking rents. Nobody else should take rents but the government on the unimproved land. Buildings you put on the land is capital. Capital is like, there was a guy that wanted to collect the eggs, made a business collecting eggs on the Farallon Islands. He got the boats, he got the baskets. That's the capital. He gave the boats and the baskets to the labor. They went out, brought the eggs, they got paid in eggs. That's capitalism. And so labor is where the value add, it's a part of the value add of why cheap raw materials come in and leave as a valuable product. That is the labor that supplied that. But so did the tools provided. You know, the tools that the capitalist, which could have been the labor, he could be self-employed, right? And he's like me, using his own tools, his own riveters or whatever to make the shoe or whatever. That also applies value. So, and having a place to do the endeavor. So it's those three things. Labor and capital are totally legit roles to make money. They're both doing things and risking things. And George's analysis is like, if a capitalist provides you with the printing press, and then you start a newspaper, of course the capitalist should get interest. He gave you the printing press. He could have given you the money for the printing press, and and the printing press is becoming decayed, and having attrition. So he deserves his percentage, and that percentage shouldn't become 1,000,000%. It's just, it can't be over 100% of what you make. It's a part of what you make. It has to be. And the justification, he said ultimately, for that Henry George said, is that you could take that money and buy a bunch of sheep, and the interest would be the wool. And plus, the sheep multiply and breed, and you have more sheep. So in something like a printing press, because of the fungibility of value, you could have invested his money in something else. You're kind of paying for capital regardless of the form of that capital. There's a shared value or interest to the capital, no matter what kind it is. And so what we need to do is stop the landlords, because they don't do any fucking thing useful. They just have a piece of paper that says they own the place that you need to put your business. And so Henry George says, well, that's just the government, and you pay taxes, and we wouldn't need any other kind of tax except for a tax on unimproved land. I've read Marxist theory in my philosophy degree in political philosophy. We had to study it. Not a huge Marxist theorist or anything, though, because I'm not a Marxist. Voluntaria, and Nicholas says, voluntary exchanges of value between individuals can't keep the lights on. We need a coercive organization to force the lights on. We just need the lights to stay on, Nicholas. I don't believe in, what is that deontological, you make up your principles and then just however it ends up, that's the right way. No, I'm results oriented. I'm an engineer. Synchronium says, likes eating meat, therefore likes torturing and killing animals, is the version of the likes chocolate, likes child labor thing. Yeah, exactly. That's a good example, because I also eat meat and I think it's superior not to, and eventually, and I've been a vegetarian, and my wife's a vegetarian now, so I don't eat as much meat, but I do eat meat still. And, I'm not perfect. It doesn't mean I like torturing and killing animals. In fact, I still am able to try to buy untortured meat, And I know the vegetarians are going to go on, that of course it's torture no matter what. But polyface farms is not torturing the lives of those animals. It's not tortured like in a corporate farm. You could say the butchery or stuff, but there's non-torture ways to do that. You could say, but it's wrong to kill another living thing, and we could get into philosophical issues where I agree with the vegetarians. Nicholas says, the foundation of any economic theory is its value theory, and Marx's value theory is the labor theory of objective exchange of value, which is demonstrably wrong. Well, whatever I just said, I believe in Henry George's model as far as that goes. It says that labor and capital are not at odds. It's the landlord's rent's too damn high. That's where all of the productivity we have, where's all that extra value going? It's going to the landlords, according to Henry George. What a bunch of bullshit. I don't need to read all that bullshit. Value is subjective, such a blah, blah, blah. NP Life apologist. Please ask Gary very nicely to check out the videos from Jerry Croth, please. I said, please. Gary doesn't fucking listen to me, and I don't talk to Gary anymore. I don't watch his videos, except for I checked to see if there was a Hythloday video, and there wasn't, so I checked Draft Science, and there is a Hythloday video and questions, but I've only watched 20 minutes of it or something, so. All right. I guess it worked. Signing off from headquarters.